On a sweltering afternoon, when the Jamaican sun set every blossom ablaze in colour, young Dahlia rested beneath a tamarind tree. The air smelled of sweet fruit, and the buzzing hush of the island's canopy settled around her. At just 12 years old, she had grown accustomed to her grandmother's story tales of cunning spirits, dancing duppies, and benevolent deities. Still, nothing stirred her imagination quite like what she was about to hear. Today, her grandmother wore a knowing smile, her milky eyes crinkling at the edges as she sat on a rough wooden stool. "Long ago, child," her grandmother began. "Before our island was as you see it, before men built their houses and changed the land, a most extraordinary contest took place. It's said that, deep in the heart of the jungle, the knowledge of the island's greatest secret, the hidden nectar, lay guarded, not by a fierce lion or a coiled serpent, but by a monstrous spider, older than the oldest tree." She closed her eyes as if looking into the distant past. "And the only challenger bold enough to wrest the treasure away was a golden hummingbird, no bigger than your thumb." Dahlia's eyes widened. "A golden hummingbird? I haven't seen one of those, Granny." Her grandmother's voice dropped to a hushed tone. "They're seldom seen, my darling girl. Some say they once soared through every Jamaican forest. Others say there was only ever one, the chosen champion, who dared face the crawling horror for the nectar of legend." She leaned forward on her old stool, capturing Dahlia's full attention. "The spider's name was Nancy the Cruel. Some folks confuse him with the trickster Anansi, but no, this creature was different. Its belly was as big as a calabash, and its legs as long as palm fronds. Nancy the Cruel hoarded that magical nectar where no one could reach it, for it climbed and stalked silently across its sticky webs, strung among the tallest trees. All beasts feared it. The wise Jamaican boa slithered away at its presence, and even the formidable crocodile took cover in the murky waters rather than test its fangs against Nancy's poisonous grin." Dahlia scrunched her nose. "And the golden hummingbird? He fought that giant? Sometimes the small and humble must do what the large and mighty dare not," answered her grandmother. "Come now, let me tell the story from the start. In the ancient times, the hush of the Jamaican rainforest whispered of wonders, waterfalls that shone like liquid emerald, vines that hung thick with wild herbs, and mountainsides cradled in swirling mists. In the dappled shade of a broad cedar, 3 hummingbirds gathered. They were small, but each possessed colour so vibrant that even the Jamaican oriole looked dull by comparison. Under the gentle music of the forest, a kind of living calypso humming deep in the undergrowth, they convened to discuss a stolen treasure. "Word has travelled through the wind," said a ruby-throated hummingbird, her voice quivering with dread. "The monstrous beast hunts all who approach his lair. He stole the last bloom of the mystical lichens, gathering their nectar into a single golden droplet, an elixir said to hold the island's essence." A shimmering emerald hummingbird fluttered its wings. "I've heard you'd become immortal if you sip from that droplet, but no creature alive can approach it without becoming prey." A hush fell over them as something small but brilliant as a midday sun alighted on a low branch. There he perched, the golden hummingbird. His feathers gleamed like molten metal, glinting every time a shaft of sunlight slipped through the leaves. His eyes were sharp with purpose, and his beak curved like a slender rapier. "Is it true the monstrous spider has stolen from our forests?" he asked, a calm tone underscoring the edge in his words. "Yes," the ruby-throated one replied. "Nancy the Cruel holds the nectar in the darkest corner of the canopy. His webs ensnare every bird. You cannot get near." "It belongs to everyone," said the golden hummingbird. "The land's life force, the sweetness that fosters blossoms and fruits, must be shared. There will be famine if the nectar is hoarded. Everything will wither." "I will challenge Nancy the Cruel," At this, the emerald hummingbird let out a plaintive chirp. "You cannot be serious. To face Nancy alone is to deliver yourself as mealtime. Think carefully. Let us gather more allies." But the golden hummingbird spread his wings, hovered in midair, and shook his head. "I stand with the forest's guardians. The nectar is our lifeblood. If we wait, it may be lost forever. Wish me speed and fly at once." Before they could protest further, the golden hummingbird darted into the dense canopy. Leaves blurred past him in shades of green, and each flash of colour glimmered across his golden wings. He soared deeper and deeper, where the sunlight began to fail, replaced by shadows that lingered like ghostly fingers on the trunks of ancient trees. All around him, insects and frogs fell silent in an uneasy hush. A pair of Jamaican boas, draped across twisted, awakened and regarded him with curious eyes. One hissed softly. "Mighty is the dedication that leads you here, golden bird," it said, flicking its black tongue. "Go no further, or Nancy the Cruel will drain your life." "I have come to reclaim what belongs to the island," replied the hummingbird. "I shall not turn back." The snake withdrew into the gloom, hissing warnings that echoed in the hush. But the golden hummingbird was unwavering. Every so often he hovered, listening for the faint hymn of corralling wind that might lead him to the spider's domain. Then he moved onward, confident and solitary. By the time the hummingbird discovered the labyrinth of webs, night had descended, cloaking the thick branches in darkness, revealing dense layers of silk woven between rotting trunks. Each strand was nearly as thick as the hummingbird's body and thrummed with an otherworldly shimmer. At the center of this glimmering maze sat Nancy the Cruel. Even from a distance, the golden hummingbird could see the spider's monstrous silhouette, a hulking figure perched on the largest web, like a king on his throne. Tendrils of moonlight glinted on Nancy's slick abdomen, painting a cosmic silver upon his black and grotesque shape. But it was the spider's eyes that told him everything. 8 diamond-like points scanning the darkness, each reflecting hunger. A small jar made of twisted web rested before him. Inside this container, encased as if in glass, gleamed a single drop of golden liquid. It pulsed faintly, as if holding the heartbeat of the island itself. Without hesitation, the hummingbird darted forward. As if sensing presence in the air, Nancy the Cruel twitched. Sinister laughter rattled through the clearing. "Who dares flutter into my realm?" hissed the spider. "Have you come to pay tribute, or have you come to be my dinner?" A gust of wind rippled across the webs, and the hummingbird hovered just outside the labyrinth. "That nectar does not belong to you," he said. "Return it, or face me." Nancy's laughter escalated, a harsh grinding sound. "A bird that all the forest praise as golden and valiant. You flap your little wings with courage, but you speak as though you could outmatch me." He tapped the thick fibers of his web. "Your bravery is a sweet perfume. Come closer. Let me enjoy it." The golden hummingbird's heart raced like tiny drums, yet his resolve did not waver. "I have come to restore balance. If that nectar remains in your vile grasp, our island will wither. I challenge you to honorable combat." At these words, an eerie hush fell. The spider turned its monstrous body, each leg shifting with a scraping noise. "Very well," Nancy hissed. "Accept my terms. We will duel for the nectar. If you best me, you win the drop. If I catch you, I will devour every last glimmer of your golden sheen." Even as dread fanned within him, the golden hummingbird lifted his beak. "Agreed." From all around, the creatures of the night moths with shimmering wings, stealthy lizards with curious eyes. Even the Jamaican boas that had previously tried to warn him crept close, drawn by the promise of an epic battle. Beneath the heavy canopy, the world fell still, awaiting the contest's first move. When dawn's first light filtered between the leaves, the duel began. Nancy the Cruel spun new strands of web with frightening speed, weaving a near-invisible fortress. His many legs scampered across the sticky rejoinders, systematically blocking exit routes. The golden hummingbird soared in tight arcs, whirling and dipping to evade the fresh nets. The spider lurched, spitting strands of silk toward his foe. The hummingbird dodged, left and right, wings buzzing in a frantic tempo as he sought an opening to strike. A loud crack signaled the spider launching yet another web line. The golden hummingbird twisted just in time to avoid being pinned. A hush followed. Almost imperceptibly, the spider's front legs rose to a threatening angle. The hummingbird knew that the spider's venom was as deadly as it was cunning, but beneath the morning sun's growing warmth, the bird felt a renewed surge. Swooping low, he aimed himself at the jar that held the nectar. "Your thirst for power blinds you," the golden hummingbird yelled, zipping so close that he nearly grazed the spider's hairy leg. "Even if you kept that nectar, you'd be cunning tyrant of a dead territory." The monstrous spider let out a guttural chitter. "I do not crave dominion over a lush empire," he spat. "I desire simply to feast on your hope, and the nectar will secure my eternity." Now, with a furious surge, Nancy the Cruel lunged. One of its barbed legs rose in a wicked arc, scraping the air. The golden hummingbird felt the tip graze his wing pane, flickered. Although no more than a flesh wound, it stung as if the sun itself had scorched his feathers. He recoiled backward. Seeing its advantage, Nancy coiled, launching an adhesive thread toward him. In a blur of gold, the hummingbird angled his wings and shot upward like an arrow. Inches below him, the sticky thread latched onto a knot in the trunk. Nancy hissed in frustration. All around, the watchers gasped. The morning sunlight poured through gaps in the canopy, illuminating the golden hummingbird's shimmering coat. He hovered, panting, a slender rivulet of blood trickling from his wing. Nancy scuttled side to side, searching for a vantage point. They clashed again and again, the air thick with tension. The spider's lunge, the hummingbird's dart, the spider's web, the hummingbird's precision. Once, the golden hummingbird darted so close he managed to slice his beak along the spider's side, cutting a shallow gash. Nancy shrieked in fury, its black eyes blazing. But soon, the whirling strands of the spider's web formed a nearly impassable barrier. The hummingbird felt his breath tighten with every beat of his wings. Suddenly, from his vantage in the swirling dust motes of morning light, he observed a tiny opening near the spider's flank. If he could slip through and retrieve the jar, he might end this without a final lethal blow. Summoning all his agility, he dove toward the opening. Nancy saw the plan. A savage grin spread across the spider's face, revealing mandibles dripping with venom. In a flash, the spider twisted backward, launching a glistening line of silk directly at the hummingbird's path. Before the bird could correct his trajectory, he collided with the sticky web. It caught around his left wing and tail feathers. He jerked violently, trying to free himself, but the web pulled him in like a fly in a trap. A hush of horror swept through the onlookers. The monstrous spider began moving in for the kill, each step of his long legs tapping closer, each hiss more triumphant. "Struggle, little bird," Nancy crooned, "and the more you struggle, the tighter the web's grip. Soon you will be mine. Your golden feathers shall line my nest, and your bravery will be but a memory." Frozen by the thick, unyielding strands, the golden hummingbird trembled. His eyes locked on the jar that held the glowing drop of nectar. So close, yet unreachable. Faintly he wondered if he had doomed the forest, if all blossoming things would perish because he hadn't been strong enough. And then he remembered the island's heartbeat, the softly rustling coconut fronds in the breeze, the sweet fragrance of blooming hibiscus, and the laughter of children. He remembered the Jamaican sunrise, creeping over blue mountain peaks. That memory spiraled a warm current through his veins, stirring new energy. A tiny call rang out behind him, and the forest watchers began to rally, chanting in chirps and hisses. "Do not give up, golden champion." It fueled his resolve. Mustering every ounce of strength, he extended the tip of his gleaming beak toward the nearest web thread and jabbed. The spider's silk was tough, but his beak was sharper than a thorn's point. 1, 2, 3 swift pecks, and the strand began to fray. Nancy hissed in alarm, descending quicker. With a final savage thrust, the golden hummingbird cut through the web. Freed from that strand, he whirled, ripping his tail feathers from the sticky grip and jabbing away the last of the binding. Bruised, battered, but not broken, he fluttered upward. Even with one wing bleeding and his tail tattered, his flight was steady. "You cannot escape me," roared the spider, spitting more silk. But the hummingbird soared in a sudden arc, twisted around a hanging vine, and narrowly evaded the spider's final snare. Before Nancy could reposition, the hummingbird shot forward directly at the jar. He managed to slip under the spider's guard and grasp the jar's handle with his slender feet. Wrenching it free of the spider's web, he gave a mighty pull, snapping the fibrous threads that held it in place. A raw, incandescent rage exploded on Nancy's face. The monstrous spider flung itself at the golden hummingbird, fangs bared, but the hummingbird surged up, wings thrumming with adrenaline. He soared above the canopy, emerging into full daylight. The jar clutched tight. Nancy, too heavy to follow him into the open sky at such speed, thundered below in outraged screeches. Freed from his labyrinth, the hummingbird whisked himself away, bearing the jar that held the single golden drop. By midday, the golden hummingbird alighted on the highest branch of a giant silk cotton tree, well beyond Nancy's domain. The spider would not give up easily, but for the moment the jar was safe. The golden droplet inside continued to pulse softly, as if thanking its rescuer. But the hummingbird's body was trembling. Exhaustion pressed his wings like stones, and his wounded side burned with pain. A hush came over the forest. Curious creatures approached in reverent awe. An owl from the deeper glades, a mongoose from the rocky hillside, and the trio of hummingbirds who had first begun the quest. Word spread that the golden champion held the nectar in his grasp. He gazed into that glowing droplet. According to legend, a single sip could grant unimaginable power. But the benevolent guardians of the forest had always insisted that the nectar's true purpose went beyond personal gain. It was the unifying element that ensured the island's bounty. He realized he must not withhold it, or simply hide it away. He had to see it restored to the Jamaican soil for all living things. Yet how could he distribute a droplet so small that it barely filled a hummingbird's beak? The forest's creatures crowded around, hope shining in their eyes. He had to find a way. It was then that a wise old parrot, his feathers dulled by age, spoke up. Deep in the eastern mountains, there is a pool that breathes the soul of the island. Our ancestors have told us that if you drop the essence into its waters, the rains and rivers shall carry the blessing everywhere. All will be made whole again. The golden hummingbird nodded, gazing at the jar. In the distance, thick clouds gathered over the rolling ridges, promising the afternoon rains. "Then we must hurry," he whispered, before Nancy the Cruel regains his strength. One by one, the animals and birds organized themselves to protect the champion on his journey. The Jamaican boas slithered along the forest floor to keep watch. The parrots, orioles, and trogons offered aerial escorts. Even the frogs croaked a rhythmic chant, echoing across swampy corners, warning others of the spider's potential approach. Traversing the island was no simple feat, even with the help of so many. Wary watchers saw flickers of activity, dark shapes scuttling in the canopy, ominous webs hanging from heights unknown. Nancy, frantic with anger, commanded lesser spiders to mount hidden attacks and block the champion's path, but every ambush was thwarted. Jamaican boas cornered creeping spiders near the roots of giant banyan trees. Parrots dive-bombed web spinners that tried to trap them mid-slaught. An entire community of agouti blocked the forest paths with their small but determined bodies, diverting the crawling forces away from the golden hummingbird's route. The journey pressed on, weaving through sunlit valleys where sugarcane thrived, across trickling streams where crayfish scuttled, and under blossoming ackee and breadfruit trees that provided bursts of shade. Despite the pain in his side, the hummingbird pressed onward, clutching the jar that contained the pulsing drop. On the second day, the small army arrived at the foot of the eastern mountains. Clouds hung low, creating a still grey dome over the peaks. Rains threatened from every direction. Surging upward, they ascended rocky paths where the air grew cooler, bringing a drizzle that pattered on broad leaves. At last, in a hidden glade cradled between towering boulders, they found the pool. It was a fabled place, rarely seen by any but the oldest creature. Ferns draped the banks, the water's surface silent as glass, reflecting the swirl of mist overhead. Drawing a ragged breath, the golden hummingbird drifted just above the pool, the jar clasped in his feet. Before he could release the nectar, a colossal shape darkened the perimeter. Nancy the Cruel, battered and seething, emerged from the swirling fog, an unholy mass of legs and fangs. A hush fell as the monstrous spider advanced. He had come for his stolen treasure, black eyes filled with venomous hatred for the champion. "Foolish bird," hissed Nancy, voice echoing. "You cannot seal the nectar away from me. I will drink its power, and none shall withstand me." A swarm of smaller spiders, newly rallied by their master, scuttled in from every direction, encircling the clearing. The forest guardians braced themselves, forming a ring around the pool. Nancy loomed on the opposite bank. "You have no place here," the emerald hummingbird screeched, stepping forward. "Your greed ends now." The monstrous spider's body coiled, readying for a final strike. "Kill them all," he commanded, and the smaller spiders charged. What followed was a chaotic symphony of screeches, hisses, and flapping wings. Parrots attacked from above, driving clusters of spiders away from the pool. Mongoose and agouti lunged at the invaders, biting and clawing. The Jamaican boas snapped at the scurrying wave that tried to flank them. From his vantage, the golden hummingbird hovered over the center of the pool, breath thick with resolve. He unscrewed the tiny jar, letting the top fall away. For just a moment, the luscious aroma of the droplet escaped into the air, rising like a perfume of pure hope. That alone made Nancy the Cruel shriek and rush forward. With measured care, the golden hummingbird tipped the jar. The glowing droplet poured out, descending through the misty air in a slow, golden arc. As soon as it struck the pool's surface, a ripple began. The glowing wave spread across the water, and instantly the entire pool lit up from within, a soft golden glow radiating outward. "No!" roared Nancy the Cruel. "No!" He lunged toward the center, ignoring the battle raging around him. In that moment, his only focus was to seize the droplet's power before it fully integrated with the water. But he was too late. The droplet dissolved into the shining waters. A second later, a column of luminous mist erupted from the pool. The force of it pushed Nancy back, causing him to stagger. Cries rose all around. It felt as if the entire forest exhaled in relief. Rain clouds overhead opened, letting sheets of gentle rain spill down, carrying the essence of the pool through streams and rivulets across the land. Nancy flailed, scuttling back from the brilliance. Harsh rain pummeled his giant form, driving him further away. He let out a wail of anguish. The nectar, once a single droplet, was now dispersed across all Jamaican soil, its magic shared equally, no longer possessed by any single entity. "Curse you, golden bird!" the spider spat, retreating. "Curse you!" With that, Nancy fled into the gloom of the mountain forest, the smaller spiders scattering in confusion. The forest guardians cheered, their voices resonating through the damp glade. Even the sky seemed to applaud, with low rumbles of thunder that felt more like the island's heartbeat than a storm. Too weary to remain airborne, the golden hummingbird finally settled on a mossy rock near the pool's edge. His golden feathers were splattered with mud and dotted with bright red drops of blood. The emerald hummingbird and the ruby-throated companion rushed to his side, their eyes full of concern. "Champion, you have done the impossible," the ruby-throated bird insisted, her voice trembling. A small wave of relief passed through the golden hummingbird. "We have done it," he corrected quietly. "Without your help, I would have perished in the spider's lair." The wise old parrot landed close by, water dripping off his ragged plumage. "The island itself owes you a debt. Its lifeblood returns, saturating soil and root. Even as these rains pass, the flora and fauna shall flourish anew." From the pool, a shimmering reflection lit the hummingbird's eyes. Though battered, he felt a serene contentment in his heart. The forest guardians gathered round, all of them silent, watching the once invisible energy swirling through the water and into the rainfall. Vines, leaves, and blossoms twitched with renewed life. Following the hush of the downpour, shafts of sunlight broke through the clouds. One slanted beam caught the golden feathers of the champion. In that moment, he felt a renewed pulse, as if the island's spirit poured from the soil into him. The wound on his wing tingled, a subtle warmness knitting the pain away. The Jamaican boas bowed their sleek heads. The agouti hopped in place, uttering squeaks of gratitude, while the parrots and orioles sang. In that mellow, sun-kissed clearing, the shimmering presence of the magic merged with the natural rhythm. There was no dominance, no tyranny, only balance. Dahlia's grandmother fell quiet, a thoughtful smile drawing across her face. The midday sun cast shifting patterns on the ground, and for a moment, neither she nor Dahlia spoke. Between them, the hush of the past blended seamlessly with the living presence of the island's day. "So," Dahlia ventured softly, "what became of the golden hummingbird after that?" Her grandmother laughed, a husky, melodic laugh. "Some say he soared off to the far corners of the island, wherever hearts needed courage. Others say he still lives in secret hollows, luminous feathers shining for those who believe. Perhaps he perished from his wounds. Legends are rarely precise. You've told me about Anansi and trickster tales before," said Dahlia, "but I never heard of Nancy the Cruel. Was he real?" "One must be wary not to mix stories. Anansi the trickster uses wit, while this spider uses only cruelty. Whether they're one and the same or different facets of fear, I cannot say for sure. But evil in any form can be overcome if the good in our hearts is strong. That's the moral, little one." Dahlia pressed closer. "And the nectar, does it still flow in our island's rain?" Smiling, her grandmother ruffled Dahlia's hair. "Every drop that nourishes our soil holds a fraction of that blessing. Someone courageous made sure it would be shared by all. Every succulent mango, every sugar-sweet coconut, every blossoming hibiscus is touched by that magic. The forest's champion saw to that." As Dahlia glanced out at the swaying palms and rippling green hills, she felt a comforting sense of awe. It was as if the land itself hummed with hidden music, soaked with stories older than time. The threads of the legend ran through the wind in sweet, lilting notes. "Remember this," her grandmother said. "We may be tiny like hummingbirds, but when compassion fuels us, we can momentarily become mightier than monsters. Never let size or fear hold you back from defending what's right." Dahlia closed her eyes, as if imagining the golden hummingbird perched on a branch overhead, dancing in the sunlight. She breathed in the humid air, thick with the fragrance of tamarind and distant sea salt. She reopened her eyes and smiled. "I won't forget, Granny," she whispered. "Never." Beyond the cluster of trees, the Jamaican breeze stirred the leaves with a whistle, almost as if in agreement, and somewhere out there, quiet in victory, an extraordinary little bird might still be singing, carrying forward the memory of a battle once waged to ensure that all living things on the island could share in the gift of life.